The shuttle carrying Ambassador Sarah Chen approached the Galactic Council station like a speck of dust drifting toward a mountain. The station was enormous, larger than Earth's moon, built from materials that shimmered with colors humans had no names for. It orbited a star called Kepler 442, chosen because no single species could claim it as theirs. Sarah pressed her hand against the cold window and watched the station grow larger. 50 years. That was how long humanity had waited for this invitation. 50 years since the first alien ship appeared over New York and changed everything humans thought they knew about the universe. "We're really doing this," said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Sarah's science officer. She sat across from Sarah, her fingers nervously tapping against her tablet. "First official meeting with the Galactic Council." "Yes," Sarah said simply. She didn't add what they both knew. This wasn't an honor. This was a test. Maybe even a joke. Behind their small diplomatic shuttle, the destroyer Perseverance followed at a respectful distance. It was old by human standards, built 30 years ago during the border wars. Its hull bore scars from a dozen conflicts. Commander Marcus Webb commanded that ship, and Sarah trusted him more than anyone else in the fleet. The shuttle docked with a soft thump. Sarah stood and smoothed her simple gray suit. She had chosen it carefully. Not too formal, not too casual. Nothing that would give these aliens more ammunition to mock humanity. The airlock opened, and they stepped into the Galactic Council chamber. Sarah had seen pictures, but they hadn't prepared her for the reality. The chamber was vast enough to swallow Earth's largest stadiums. Seats rose in circular tiers, thousands of them, each occupied by a different species. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that Sarah's brain struggled to process what her eyes saw. Floating jellyfish with glowing tentacles, creatures made of living crystal, beings that seemed to be pure energy contained in shimmering fields. A small insect-like creature approached them. It wore a translator device around what Sarah thought might be its neck. "Earth delegation, follow please," it chittered. The translator made its voice sound bored. They followed the creature through the chamber. Sarah noticed immediately that they were being led to the far corner, the upper levels where the seats were smallest and plainest. The novice quarter, the briefing documents had called it, where newly discovered species sat. Species that had barely learned to make fire sat in those seats. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she showed nothing on her face. She had been a military strategist before becoming a diplomat. She knew how to keep her emotions locked away. As they reached their seats, the chamber fell silent. Not a respectful silence, an amused silence. A massive figure rose from the center seats. It stood 12 feet tall, covered in scales that looked like polished bronze. Chancellor Vexthor of the Drexian Empire. His species had mastered faster-than-light travel 3,000 years ago. "Ah!" Vexthor's voice boomed through the chamber, enhanced by technology. "The humans have arrived, how quaint." Laughter rippled through the chamber like a wave. Sarah heard it in 1,000 different forms. Chirps, roars, whistles, sounds that made her teeth ache. But she knew laughter when she heard it. "Please, Ambassador Chen," Vexthor continued, "do not let us keep you standing. Take your seat. I'm sure you'll find it comfortable. We had it specially sized for your dimensions." More laughter. Sarah climbed to her assigned seat and sat down. The chair was indeed sized for humans, but it was placed between a species that looked like giant slugs and another that smelled strongly of sulfur. "Another small insult now then," Vexthor said, his voice taking on a tone of mock seriousness. "Let us review Earth's application for membership in the Galactic Council. Such an important matter deserves our full attention." A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth rotating slowly. Then images began to appear around it. Human cities, human technology, human history. "Let's see," Vexthor said, reading from a data pad. "Nuclear technology discovered only 300 years ago. Still using chemical propulsion for most spacecraft. No native faster-than-light capability, and," he paused for effect, "they still have wars, actual wars. In the current century." The laughter was louder this time. A purple, blob-like creature near the center spoke up. "Surely you jest, Chancellor. I thought we were reviewing Earth's application, not providing entertainment." "Oh, I assure you, Ambassador Xyloth, this is quite real," Vexthor replied. "The humans are still killing each other over borders, resources, and ideas. How very primitive." Sarah felt Yuki tense beside her, but Sarah remained perfectly still. Let them laugh. Let them show their contempt. Every word they spoke gave her information. Another delegate stood. This one looked vaguely reptilian, covered in green scales. Perhaps we should classify Earth as a protectorate species. They clearly need guidance before they harm themselves. An excellent suggestion, Vexthor agreed. We could assign them supervisors. Make sure they don't do anything dangerous. After all, we wouldn't want the clever apes to push the wrong button and blow themselves up. The chamber erupted in laughter again. Sarah noticed that not everyone was laughing. In the lower tiers, where the true power sat, some delegates watched silently. An old, scarred creature that looked like it was made of stone, a being of pure light contained in an elegant vessel. They weren't laughing. The presentation continued for another hour. Every achievement humanity was proud of was presented as a joke. Landed on the moon? The galaxy had mastered interstellar travel before humans discovered agriculture. Cured diseases? The Xylothians eliminated all illness from their species 2 millennia ago. Created artificial intelligence? Every species in the council had done that and then moved beyond it. Finally, Vexthor spoke again. I believe we have seen enough. The council will need time to evaluate whether Earth has earned the right to join us as a full member. This process typically takes one standard cycle. During this time, Ambassador Chen and her delegation will remain here as our guests. The word guests carried the weight of prisoners. In the meantime, Vexthor continued, we will observe how Earth conducts itself, whether humanity can demonstrate the maturity and wisdom required to join the great civilizations of the galaxy. Sarah stood. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect. The people of Earth thank the Galactic Council for this opportunity. We understand we have much to learn. We will wait patiently for your evaluation. Her voice was calm, measured, giving nothing away. She didn't defend Earth, didn't argue, didn't show anger or shame. Vexthor looked almost disappointed. Perhaps he had hoped for an emotional outburst. Something else to laugh at. Very well, he said. This session is concluded. Earth's delegation may return to their quarters. Sarah turned and walked out of the chamber, her team following. Behind her, the laughter resumed. She could hear them discussing Earth, making jokes, wondering why the council had even bothered with such a primitive species. When they were safely in the corridor, Yuki whispered urgently, Ambassador, that was expected, Sarah interrupted quietly. She pulled out a small communication device, encrypted and undetectable to council scanners. Human technology might be primitive, but humans were very good at keeping secrets. She typed a short message and sent it to the Perseverance, still waiting in orbit. The message was simple. Protocol Gamma, stand ready. Commander Webb would understand. It meant they weren't here to beg for acceptance. They were here to do what humanity had always done, survive. The quarters assigned to Earth's delegation were small and plain. 3 connected rooms with basic furniture and no decorations. The message was clear. Humans were not important enough for comfort. Sarah didn't care about comfort. She cared about information. Yuki, she said quietly, can you access their public archives? Yuki smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Already working on it. Their security is impressive, but they designed it to stop military attacks, not quiet data collection. Give me an hour. Sarah nodded and moved to the window. The view showed the vast expanse of the Galactic Council station. Thousands of ships moved through the space around it, representing hundreds of species. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt sterile, orderly, safe, too safe. Dr. James Rodriguez, their military analyst, sat at the small table reviewing his notes. Ambassador, did you notice how they talked about war? Like it was a children's story, something that happened long ago but couldn't happen now. I noticed, Sarah said. How long has it been since the galaxy had a real war? According to the briefing documents, 600 years. The last major conflict was the Drexian-Xylothian War. It ended with a negotiated peace, and since then, the major powers have maintained equilibrium. Equilibrium, Sarah repeated. That's a nice word for stagnation. 3 hours later, Yuki called them to her terminal. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly. Ambassador, you need to see this. Sarah leaned over the screen. Yuki had pulled historical records from the Council archives, information freely available to any member species. Information that Earth had never been given. The Drexian-Xylothian War had ended 600 years ago, not through victory or defeat, but through calculation. Both sides had developed economic models that proved continued fighting would cost more than any possible gain. So they stopped. They negotiated borders, signed treaties, and the war ended. Since then, there hadn't been a single major conflict. Minor disputes were settled through arbitration. Trade disagreements went to council committees. Territorial claims were negotiated over decades. They forgot how to fight, James said softly. They didn't evolve past war. They just stopped. Sarah scrolled through more files. Military vessels of the council species were magnificent. Shields that could stop tremendous amounts of energy, weapons that could theoretically destroy planets, propulsion systems that bent space itself. But when she looked at their tactical doctrines, her blood ran cold. These aren't battle plans, she said. These are simulations, academic exercises. Look at this, Yuki pulled up another file. Drexian Naval Academy training logs. They run combat scenarios, but they're all theoretical. No live fire exercises. No stress testing. It's like learning surgery from a textbook without ever touching a patient. Sarah thought about Earth, about humanity's brutal history. 2 world wars that killed hundreds of millions. The border wars of the 22nd century. The resource conflicts. Humans had been fighting since they climbed down from the trees. Every human military vessel had seen combat. Every human officer had trained under the assumption that someday, somewhere, they would need to kill or be killed. The galaxy looked at humanity's violence and saw primitives. Sarah looked at the galaxy's peace and saw weakness. How did Earth stay isolated for 50 years? James asked. If they welcomed other species so easily, why not us? Yuki pulled up another file. This is why. There's a classified designation for Earth. They call it species under observation. They knew about us long before first contact. They watched us fight, watched us kill each other, and they decided we needed to mature before we were ready to join the council. Mature, Sarah repeated bitterly. They wanted us to stop being dangerous. While they became helpless, James added. A soft chime interrupted them. Sarah's personal communicator was receiving an emergency broadcast. She activated it and Chancellor Vex Thor's face appeared on the screen. He looked different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something humans recognized instantly. Fear. This is an emergency broadcast to all council members and guests, Vex Thor said. 3 colony worlds on the galactic rim have been attacked by an unknown force. The attacks were sudden and overwhelming. Initial reports indicate significant casualties. The broadcast cut to images from the colonies, cities burning, ships destroyed, and massive vessels moving through space unlike anything Sarah had seen before. They were black, angular, covered in weapons. They looked like they were designed for one purpose: destruction. The attackers call themselves the Void Reavers, Vex Thor continued. They have issued a demand. Surrender the core worlds within 1 standard cycle, or they will continue their assault. An emergency session of the council will convene in 4 hours. All delegates must attend. The broadcast ended. Sarah's team sat in silence. Void Reavers, James said finally. Never heard of them. No one has, Yuki said, already searching the archives. They're not in any council records. It's like they appeared from nowhere. But Sarah understood. They didn't appear from nowhere. They were out there, in the dark parts of the galaxy where the council doesn't bother to look, and they watched the core worlds become soft, comfortable, weak, like wolves watching sheep, James said. Sarah nodded. Exactly like that. And now the sheep are calling an emergency meeting to discuss what to do about wolves. Over the next 4 hours, Sarah reviewed everything they could find about the Void Reavers. It wasn't much. They had ships that moved fast and hit hard. They didn't bother with warnings or negotiations. They just attacked. The council species had tried to respond. Their fleets moved to intercept. And from the scattered reports, Sarah could see what had happened. The council ships had advanced shields and powerful weapons, but they fought like they were in a simulation. Predictable formations, textbook maneuvers. The Void Reavers fought like they wanted to win. Aggressive, unpredictable, brutal. They didn't care about preserving their ships or minimizing casualties. They cared about destroying the enemy. The council fleets had been shattered. When it was time for the emergency session, Sarah walked into the chamber and found chaos. Delegates shouted at each other in hundreds of languages. Accusations flew back and forth. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had a solution. Chancellor Vexthor tried to maintain order, but even he looked lost. The stone-like creature from the lower tiers, Grand Admiral Courthax of the Xylothian fleet, stood and spoke. "We need to prepare our defenses, rally all available ships to protect the core worlds." "And what good will that do?" a delegate shouted. "They destroyed our fleets at the colonies." "We need to negotiate," another voice called. "Send ambassadors to discuss terms." They didn't want to negotiate at the colonies. They just killed everyone. Sarah watched from her seat in the upper tiers. She watched experienced diplomats panic. She watched military officers propose plans that wouldn't work. She watched an entire civilization realize that 600 years of peace had made them forget how to protect themselves. A delegate near the center stood. "What about the humans? They're still fighting wars, aren't they? Perhaps they have insights." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then Chancellor Vexthor laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "The humans? What could they possibly offer? They're primitives. Their ships are outdated. Their weapons are crude." "Their weapons work," Grand Admiral Courthax said quietly. "This is not a time for desperation," Vexthor snapped. "We will handle this ourselves. As we have handled everything for 600 years. Sarah stood. She didn't ask for permission to speak. She just stood and waited. Vexthor noticed her. "Ambassador Chen, unless you have something meaningful to contribute, please sit down." "We don't have time for—" "You're going to die," Sarah said simply. The chamber went silent. "Excuse me?" Vexthor's voice was ice. "You're going to die," Sarah repeated. "All of you. Unless you stop pretending this is a diplomatic problem and accept what it really is." "And what is it?" Vexthor asked. Sarah looked at him steadily. "War." The word hung in the air like a poison. War. A concept so old and forgotten that most species in the chamber had to search their memories for what it truly meant. Chancellor Vexthor's scales darkened with anger. "How dare you? This is the Galactic Council, not some primitive battlefield." "We will resolve this through what?" Sarah interrupted. She began walking down the tiers toward the center of the chamber. Security guards moved to intercept her, but something in the way she moved made them hesitate. This small human woman radiated a certainty that gave them pause. "Will you resolve it through committees?" Sarah continued. "Negotiations?" Strongly worded statements. "The Void Reavers have killed millions. They're not interested in talking." A delegate near the center stood. "Then what do you suggest? That we become like you? Violent, barbaric?" Sarah reached the center floor. She turned slowly, looking at all of them. Hundreds of species. Thousands of years of civilization, and not one of them ready for what was coming. "You think Earth is barbaric because we know war," Sarah said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber. "You laugh at us because we still have conflicts. You mock us because we haven't achieved your perfect peace." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But your peace isn't strength. It's just the absence of threat. And now the threat is here and you have no idea what to do." "We have fleets," Vexthor shouted. "We have weapons more advanced than anything your primitive world could imagine." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "You have beautiful ships, powerful weapons, impressive shields. But you know what you don't have?" She waited, letting the question hang. "You don't have experience. Your admirals learned tactics from books written 600 years ago. Your soldiers trained in simulations where nobody bleeds. Your weapons have never been fired in anger. You've had peace for so long that you've forgotten what it costs to keep peace." Grand Admiral Courthax stood from his seat in the lower tiers. He was old, Sarah realized. Old enough to remember the last war. "What would you have us do, human?" Sarah looked at him. In his eyes she saw something she recognized. A warrior who knew he had become soft. "I would have you face reality. The Void Reavers are coming. Your fleets can't stop them because your people don't know how to fight anymore. They know how to perform maneuvers. They know how to follow protocols. But when someone starts shooting back for real, when ships start exploding and people start dying, they won't know what to do." "And you do?" a voice challenged from the crowd. "Yes," Sarah said simply. "Because we never stopped fighting. While you were building your perfect peace, humans were surviving. Every generation of humanity has known war. Not because we enjoy it, not because we're primitive, but because we couldn't afford to forget." She began pacing the center floor, her voice growing stronger. "You have one destroyer escorting my delegation, the Perseverance. You probably think it's a joke, an old ship from a backward species. But that ship has fought in 7 major conflicts. Its captain has made life and death decisions under fire. Its crew knows what it means when someone doesn't come back from a battle station. One ship, Vexthor said dismissively. What difference could one ship make against an entire fleet? More than you imagine, Sarah replied. Because that one ship knows something all your beautiful fleets have forgotten. War isn't about having the best technology. It's about having the will to use it. It's about making hard choices. It's about understanding that sometimes to protect what you love, you have to destroy what threatens it. She stopped pacing and looked directly at Chancellor Vexthor. You want to know what Earth can offer? I'll tell you. Give me command of your forces and I'll show you how to survive. I'll teach your admirals how to think like predators instead of bureaucrats. I'll show your soldiers that simulations don't prepare you for the moment when your friend dies next to you. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in outrage. The idea of a human commanding council forces was unthinkable. Insulting, ridiculous, but Sarah wasn't finished. Or don't, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. Keep doing what you're doing. Send your fleets with their academy-trained officers and their untested tactics. Watch them die. Watch the Void Reavers take world after world. And when they reach your home planets, when they're burning your cities and killing your families, remember this moment. Remember when a primitive human offered to help, and you were too proud to accept. This is outrageous, Vexthor roared. You come here as a guest and you dare to— I came here hoping to join your council, Sarah interrupted. I came here thinking the galaxy was ready to welcome Earth, but now I see the truth. You don't need Earth to join you. You need Earth to save you. The chamber fell into a stunned silence. Sarah stood alone in the center, facing the judgment of the galaxy. Then Grand Admiral Courthax spoke. Ambassador Chen, if we were to grant you this authority, what would you do? Specifically. Sarah had been waiting for this question. She pulled out a small datapad and activated it. A holographic display appeared, showing the positions of council fleets and the projected path of the Void Reavers. Your fleets are spread too thin, she said, pointing to the display. You're trying to defend everything, which means you can't defend anything effectively. I would consolidate here, and here, create strong defensive positions instead of weak patrol lines. She manipulated the display showing ship movements. Your battle doctrine relies on standoff weapons, long-range energy beams that look impressive but can be countered with the right shields. I would supplement with kinetic weapons, projectiles that don't care about energy deflection. Kinetic weapons? A delegate laughed. Those are ancient. Ancient and effective, Sarah replied. Your shields are designed to stop energy. A hunk of metal moving at relativistic speeds doesn't care about your shields, she continued, outlining tactics that made the military officers in the chamber lean forward. Aggressive maneuvers, unpredictable attack patterns, using terrain, asteroids, debris fields, radiation zones as tactical advantages. You fight like you're trying to win a game, Sarah said. The Void Reavers fight like they're trying to survive. You need to remember how to do the same. When she finished, the chamber was quiet. Every military mind present understood what they had just heard. This human from a species they had mocked hours ago had outlined a strategy that made more sense than anything their own admirals had proposed. Chancellor Vexthor looked ill. A vote, he said quietly. We will vote on granting Ambassador Chen emergency tactical authority over council forces. The voting took only minutes. It passed by the narrowest margin. The major powers voted against it, unwilling to admit they needed help from primitives. But enough smaller species, enough terrified delegates voted yes. Sarah felt the weight of that decision settle on her shoulders. She had just been given command of forces she had never trained with, using technology she barely understood, against an enemy she knew almost nothing about. If you fail, Vexthor said coldly, Earth will be expelled from any consideration for council membership, forever. You will have proven that humans are not only primitive but dangerous. Unfit to join civilized society, Sarah met his gaze without flinching. If I fail, it won't matter. Because the Void Reavers will kill us all. She turned and walked back toward her team. As she passed Grand Admiral Courthax, the old warrior nodded slightly. A gesture of respect. He understood what she was about to attempt. Sarah pulled out her encrypted communicator and sent a message to the Perseverance. Commander Marcus Webb responded immediately. Marcus, she transmitted, I need you to do what we do best. There was a pause. Then Webb's voice came back, and Sarah could hear the grim satisfaction in it. Finally, what are the rules of engagement? Sarah looked around the chamber, at the species who had laughed at Earth, at the civilization that had forgotten how to protect itself, at the galaxy that needed saving whether it wanted it or not. There are no rules, Marcus, she said. This is war. The Perseverance moved through space like a predator stalking prey. On the Council Station's observation screens, every delegate watched the human destroyer position itself between the station and the approaching Void Reaver fleet. This is suicide, Chancellor Vexthor muttered. 1 ship against 40. Sarah stood in the improvised command center she had set up in the council chamber. Her team worked frantically at borrowed terminals, coordinating with council fleet commanders who reluctantly followed her orders. She didn't respond to Vexthor. She was too busy working. Admiral Courthax, position your battle group here, she said, marking coordinates on the tactical display. Heavy shields forward. You're not there to attack. You're there to absorb damage. The old Xylothian admiral acknowledged without question. His ships moved into position. Drexian cruisers maintain long-range support. Fire on my command only. Sarah's fingers flew across the controls, positioning ships across the defensive grid. On the Perseverance, Commander Marcus Webb sat in his captain's chair, watching the Void Reaver fleet approach. 40 capital ships, each one larger than his destroyer. They moved in a loose formation, confident and unconcerned. Weapons status? Webb asked calmly. All systems green, sir, his weapons officer reported. Nuclear torpedoes loaded and ready. Railguns charged. Point defense active. Good. Webb studied the enemy formation. They weren't being careful. Why would they be? They had shattered every council fleet they had encountered. One destroyer shouldn't even slow them down. They didn't understand humans yet. Sir, we're being hailed, the communications officer said. The Void Reavers want to talk. Webb smiled coldly. Put them through. A face appeared on the main screen. It was humanoid but wrong. Gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones, eyes that glowed with a sickly yellow light. The Void Reaver commander smiled, revealing rows of pointed teeth. Little destroyer, the Reaver said in accented but clear galactic standard. You sit alone before us. Do you wish to surrender? We might let you leave. Your council masters abandoned these colonies easily enough. Perhaps they will abandon you too. Webb didn't respond immediately. He studied the enemy commander, reading body language, looking for tells. The Reaver was confident. Too confident we don't surrender, Webb said finally. We fight, the Reaver laughed. Then you die pointlessly. What is 1 ship? Let's find out, Webb replied and cut the transmission. He opened a channel to Sarah. Ambassador, they're not taking us seriously. Good, Sarah's voice came back. Keep them focused on you. When they commit, we spring the trap. Webb nodded to himself. Understood. Webb out. He looked at his crew. Young men and women who had trained for this their entire careers. Who knew that someday they might have to die protecting others. Human faces, determined and afraid and ready. This is it, Webb said. They think we're prey. Let's teach them about humans. The Void Reaver fleet advanced. They didn't bother with caution or tactics. They simply accelerated toward the council station, the Perseverance directly in their path. They're powering weapons, the tactical officer reported. Let them, Webb said. Hold position, hold. The Reavers opened fire. Energy beams lanced across space, brilliant and deadly. The Perseverance's shields flared as they absorbed the impact. Warning alarm screamed. Shields at 70%, the tactical officer called. Steady, Webb said. More fire. The destroyer rocked under the impact. Systems sparked. The bridge lights flickered. Shields at 40%. Not yet, Webb said calmly. The Void Reavers closed the distance, confident in their overwhelming firepower. They focused entirely on the single human ship, ignoring the council vessels that waited in the distance. Sir, shields at 20%. We need to move. Webb watched his tactical display. The enemy ships were exactly where Sarah said they would be. Clustered together, focused on a single target, supremely confident. Now, Webb said quietly. Then louder, all weapons fire. The Perseverance unleashed everything it had. Nuclear torpedoes shot from launch tubes, accelerating toward the enemy fleet. Railguns fired, hurling metal slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. Every weapon system on the destroyer activated simultaneously. The council observers watched in shock. They had never seen such aggressive, brutal tactics. Ships didn't fight like this. Ships maneuvered carefully, exchanged long-range fire, withdrew to regroup. Humans didn't fight like that. The nuclear torpedoes reached the Void Reaver formation and detonated. In space, nuclear weapons don't create the mushroom clouds of planetary warfare. They create spheres of radiation and electromagnetic pulses. The Reaver shields, designed to stop energy beams, struggled against the raw physics of fission reactions. Before they could recover, the railgun rounds hit, solid metal traveling at incredible speeds. The Reaver shields, already stressed by the nuclear blasts, collapsed. The projectiles punched through hulls like paper. 6 Reaver ships died in the opening salvo. Just died, no graceful destruction, no dramatic explosions. One moment they were ships, the next they were expanding clouds of debris. Direct hits, the weapons officer shouted. 6 confirmed kills. Helm, evasive pattern Delta, Webb ordered. Make us hard to hit. The Perseverance began moving in ways that made Council observers feel sick. Sudden accelerations that would paste a crew against bulkheads if not for inertial dampeners. Spins and rolls that defied standard naval doctrine. The ship moved like it was alive, dodging and weaving through incoming fire. They're breaking formation, the tactical officer reported. The Reavers are confused. Good, Webb said. Ambassador, they're all yours. On the Council station, Sarah activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships execute attack plan now. The Council vessels, positioned according to Sarah's instructions, opened fire. Not the careful, measured barrages they had been taught, but overwhelming volleys aimed at the coordinates Sarah provided. They weren't trying to hit specific ships. They were filling space with weapons fire, creating a kill zone the Reavers had to fly through. Grand Admiral Court Hax's battle group moved forward, shields absorbing the Reaver counterattack. The old warrior had positioned his ships in an overlapping pattern, each vessel covering the others. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. The Drexian cruisers fired their long-range weapons not at the nearest targets, but at the ships trying to escape the kill zone. Sarah had calculated their retreat paths and placed fire exactly where they would be. The Void Reavers, expecting another easy victory, found themselves in a coordinated defense for the first time. They had superior numbers and firepower, but they were fighting blind while the Council fleet fought as a unified force. The Perseverance dove into an asteroid field that Sarah had identified earlier. Webb used the cover expertly, appearing from behind rocks to fire, then disappearing before return fire could lock on. It was dangerous flying that no Council pilot would attempt. This is insane, Chancellor Vexthor said, watching the battle. They're taking incredible risks. They're winning, Grand Admiral Court Hax replied quietly. Another Reaver ship exploded. Then another. The Council fleet, fighting under human guidance, was taking damage but holding formation. They were learning, remembering skills their ancestors had once known, but the Void Reavers were adapting too. Their flagship, the massive Eternal Darkness, pushed forward. It was 3 times the size of any Council vessel, covered in weapons, its shields so powerful they seemed to ripple the space around them. The Reaver commander's voice broadcast across all channels. Enough, you fight well for primitives, but this ends now. Behold the power that will conquer the galaxy. The Eternal Darkness powered up its main weapon. Energy readings spiked off the charts. Whatever that weapon was, it was powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. Sarah saw the readings and felt her blood run cold. Marcus, he's targeting the station. He's going to kill everyone here. I see it, Webb replied. Moving to intercept. You can't stop that weapon. Your shields won't hold. I know, Webb said calmly. But I can buy you time. Use it well, Ambassador. The Perseverance burned toward the Eternal Darkness at maximum acceleration. Every Council ship watched as the small human destroyer positioned itself between the station and the massive flagship. All power to forward shields, Webb ordered, and get me a firing solution on their weapons power core. Sir, if we fire at that range, the explosion will... I know what it will do, Webb interrupted. Do it anyway. Sarah watched helplessly from the station. She wanted to order Webb to retreat to save himself, but she knew he wouldn't listen. This was what he had trained for his entire life. This was what humans did. They stood between danger and those who couldn't protect themselves. Marcus, Sarah said softly into the comm. Thank you, Webb smiled. Thank me by making this count. All crew, abandon ship, get to the escape pods. That's an order. He waited until his crew evacuated, watched the pods launch toward the Council fleet. Then he sat alone in the captain's chair of the Perseverance and spoke one last time. Ambassador, tell them we don't fight for glory. We don't fight for honor. Sarah's voice was thick with emotion. What do you fight for, Commander? Webb looked at the massive Reaver flagship filling his screens. At the weapon that would kill millions if he failed. At the galaxy that had mocked humanity and now depended on one human to save them. We fight to win, Webb said, and fired. The Perseverance's weapons fired at point-blank range into the Eternal Darkness's charging weapon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flagship's power core destabilized. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, but it was beautiful and terrible. A sphere of energy expanded from the Eternal Darkness, consuming the massive ship from within. The electromagnetic pulse radiated outward, washing over every vessel in the area. The Perseverance disappeared in the blast, simply ceased to exist. But Commander Webb had calculated perfectly. The flagship's destruction created an electromagnetic cascade that rippled through the Void Reaver fleet. Their shields collapsed. Their weapons went offline. Their systems sparked and died. All ships. Sarah's voice cut through the stunned silence. Fire everything. Now the Council fleet didn't hesitate. Every weapon, every system, every ounce of firepower they possessed unleashed on the crippled Reaver vessels. The battle that had seemed impossible minutes ago became a massacre. The Void Reavers tried to retreat, but Sarah had positioned Council ships along their escape routes. There was nowhere to run. One by one, the Reaver ships were destroyed or surrendered. The few that escaped limped away into the dark, their threat broken. When the last enemy ship fell silent, the Council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates cheered, cried, embraced each other. Species that had spent 600 years in carefully maintained peace celebrated like warriors of old. Sarah stood silently at her command station, staring at the empty space where the Perseverance had been. Yuki stood beside her, tears streaming down her face. James bowed his head in respect. 147 humans had died in that battle. 147 people who would never go home, including Marcus Webb, a man who had understood that sometimes survival required sacrifice. Chancellor Vexthor approached Sarah slowly. His scales had lost their bronze shine. He looked old and tired. Ambassador Chen, he began, then stopped. Words seemed inadequate. Don't, Sarah said quietly. Don't apologize. Don't thank me. Just learn from this. Learn what? Vexthor asked. Sarah finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were red but dry. Learn that peace isn't the absence of war. It's the strength to maintain it. Learn that being civilized doesn't mean forgetting how to protect what matters. Learn that the next threat won't ask permission before attacking. She looked around the chamber at all the delegates watching her. You had 600 years of peace because no one challenged you. Not because you were strong, but because you were lucky. That luck ran out today. Next time you might not have humans to save you. Grand Admiral Kortak stepped forward. The old warrior's face was grim. She speaks truth. We have forgotten what our ancestors knew. We built a civilization on the foundation of their sacrifices, then convinced ourselves we had evolved beyond the need for such sacrifices. He turned to address the chamber. Today, one human ship and its crew reminded us what we lost. They showed us that strength isn't just technology and treaties. It's the will to use them when necessary. A smaller delegate, one of the species that had voted to give Sarah command, spoke up. What happens now? The Reavers are defeated, but they came from somewhere. There could be others like them, Sarah nodded. There will be others. There are always others. The galaxy is vast and dark, and you can't negotiate with everything out there. You need to be ready. Chancellor Vexthor straightened and some of his old authority returned. Then we will be ready. The Council must undergo military reform. Our fleets must be rebuilt, retrained, prepared for real combat. It won't be easy, Sarah warned. Your people have forgotten how to think like warriors. It will take time. Then we will take that time, Vexthor said. He paused, then spoke formally. The Galactic Council hereby grants Earth full membership, effective immediately. All rights, all privileges, all responsibilities. The chamber voted unanimously. No laughter this time. No mockery. Just respect. Furthermore, Vexthor continued, we propose the creation of a new position, Galactic Military Coordinator, someone to oversee the reformation of Council Defense Forces. We offer this position to you, Ambassador Chen. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She looked at Yuki and James, at her small team that had helped coordinate the impossible victory. Then she shook her head. I decline, she said. The chamber erupted in confused voices. Vexthor looked shocked. But why? You proved your capabilities. You saved us. That's exactly why I declined, Sarah replied. You need to save yourselves. If you rely on humans to protect you, you'll never relearn what you forgot. You'll just trade one kind of dependence for another. She gestured to Grand Admiral Cortax. Give the position to him. He remembers the old ways. He can teach the young ones. Earth will provide advisors, trainers, tactical consultants. We'll help you rebuild your military capabilities. But this has to be your reformation, not ours. Cortax stepped forward and placed a massive hand on Sarah's shoulder. You honor us with your wisdom as much as your courage. We accept. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Emergency aid was organized for the attacked colonies. Rescue teams were dispatched to search for survivors. The Council's bureaucratic machine, so slow to respond to military threats, proved efficient at disaster relief. Sarah's team was given proper quarters this time. Large, comfortable rooms in the diplomatic section. The same rooms reserved for senior ambassadors from the most powerful species. But Sarah couldn't sleep. She stood at the window looking out at the debris field where the battle had occurred. Council salvage crews worked carefully, recovering the escape pods from the Perseverance. Commander Webb's crew would survive. They would go home to Earth as heroes. But Webb himself was gone, along with the handful of crew who had stayed to keep the ship running until the last moment. You should rest, Yuki said, entering quietly. You've been awake for 30 hours. I keep thinking about what Marcus said, Sarah replied. That we fight to win. Is that really why we fight? Yuki stood beside her. I think we fight because someone has to. Because the alternative is watching everything burn. Sarah nodded slowly. The galaxy thought we were primitive because we know violence. But violence isn't the problem. It's just a tool. The problem is forgetting when to use it and when not to. Do you think they'll remember this? Yuki asked. Some will, Sarah said. The ones like Cortax who still understand. The younger ones who saw their beautiful peace shattered. They'll remember. And the others? Sarah smiled slightly. In 100 years, there will be another council full of delegates who never saw war. Who think peace is permanent. And maybe that's okay. Maybe every generation has to learn the lesson again. That's depressing, Yuki said. No, Sarah replied. That's humanity. We've had to learn the lesson over and over. Maybe that's our real gift to the galaxy. Not our weapons or tactics. Just the reminder that peace is worth fighting for. 3 days later, Earth's delegation prepared to return home. The council threw a ceremony in their honor. Delegates from hundreds of species attended. They presented Sarah with medals, awards, honorary titles. She accepted them graciously, but without pride. These weren't victories to celebrate. They were lessons written in blood. As her shuttle prepared to depart, Chancellor Vexthor came to see her off personally. Ambassador Chen, he said formally, I must admit something. When you first arrived, I thought Earth was a joke. I thought humans were primitives playing at civilization. I know, Sarah said. Everyone did. I was wrong, Vexthor continued. Not about your technology. Earth is still centuries behind our most advanced species, but about what matters. You understand something we forgot. That civilization isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about knowing what's worth fighting for. Sarah extended her hand, a human gesture. Vexthor took it carefully. The galaxy won't laugh at Earth anymore, he said. Good, Sarah replied. Because we have work to do. The Void Reavers are just the beginning. There's a whole galaxy out there and most of it isn't friendly. Then we'll face it together, Vexthor said. As equals. Sarah boarded her shuttle. As it pulled away from the station, she looked back one last time at the massive structure. Somewhere in the debris field beyond, the Perseverance drifted in pieces. A monument to human courage, but also a warning. The galaxy had laughed at Earth when they arrived, mocked their primitive violence, their crude weapons, their inability to achieve lasting peace. Then one human spoke, reminding them that peace without strength is just waiting to be conquered. And when the human battleship fired, when Commander Marcus Webb sacrificed himself and his ship to save millions, every voice in the galaxy fell silent. They understood then. Earth wasn't primitive. Earth was experienced, and in a universe that was vast, dark, and dangerous, experience was the most valuable thing any civilization could possess. The shuttle accelerated toward home, carrying Sarah Chen and her team back to Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Council began the long process of relearning what humanity had never forgotten. That peace doesn't come from forgetting how to fight. It comes from never wanting to fight again, but being ready if you must. And as the first human military advisors arrived at Council training facilities, as Earth's tactical doctrines were studied by alien cadets, as the galaxy slowly remembered what it meant to defend itself,